All right, guys. Sorry that it's taken me so long to get this up. Let's go ahead and get started with development. All right, I'm going to be reading along as we do this. So make sure that you follow along in the notes as we would just normally in class. All right. So let's start with I guess it's slide number 3. Definition of development. Development refers to the pattern of continuity and change in human capabilities that occurs throughout the course of life. Basically, your development is from the time you were conceived until the moment that you die. You never stop changing. Change is inevitable, and everyone and everything, every living thing at least, has some period of growth from the time that it starts, from the time that it ends. Now, throughout this phase, there are 3 different ways in which you can develop or change or grow, or however you want to call it. These 3 things are physical changes, cognitive processes, and socio-emotional processes. The first, physical processes, involve change in an individual's biological nature, how your body changes, how your body alters itself through your genetics or even from your environment. Your environment can also affect your physical and biological change. The whole nature versus nurture thing, we'll get into that a little bit later, but basically environment can influence physical development, and physical development can influence and alter the environment in which you find yourself. We basically men go through 3 phases of physical development. Women, you ladies have 4. Neonatal, and then you have early childhood, and then you have puberty. That is what both men and women go through. Women, you actually have a 4th one. That 4th one is menopause. So as we go through this, again, just kind of keep in mind that I'm following along in your notes and you need to kind of do the same. All right, second one. Cognitive processes involve changes in an individual's thought, intelligence, and language. So your level of education, the new things you learn, the way that you see and outlook and interact with the world, that, of course, changes as you go through life. As you gain more experiences, the way that you view the world, the way that you are able to process new information, and the way that you kind of think about things in your environment and things with which your environment kind of has a way of interacting with you, that can also change as you grow old and as you develop and as you become more educated in things that are as you become more cultured and more immersed in your world. The final one, socio-emotional processes. These involve changes in an individual's relationships with other people, changes in their emotions, and changes in their personality. So basically, the types of people you hang around with can also have a great impact and influence on your development, how you change, who you ultimately become. You'll probably find that the types of people that you are friends with, the types of people that you find perhaps attractive, that you have a relationship with, those types of people are going to change from the early childhood all the way until the day you get married and the day you ultimately die. The types of people that you are influenced or inspired by, the types of people that you find attractive, the types of people that you want to spend your time with, those are all going to change throughout the entire course of your life. All right, nature versus nurture. The term nature refers to an organism's biological inheritance, whereas the term nurture refers to an organism's environmental experiences. So you basically have biology versus environment, and these 2 things are kind of in a constant tug of war. You cannot tease apart the influence of either nature or nurture on any one specific aspect of your being. We can't escape our bodies. We can't kind of get away from the biological influence of our genes and things like that. And you also can't escape your experiences. We talked about that, I think, in maybe the first week or so of class. We are kind of this collection of our experiences, and who we are is the ultimate makeup of both this combined interactive force of nature, of your biology and your genes, and your nurture, of your environment and your experiences. The interaction of nature and nurture, of genes and environment, influences every aspect of mind and behavior to a degree. Neither factor operates alone. This is kind of what we were just talking about. It's an interplay between biology and your environment, of your nature and your nurture. No one of those factors operates alone. It is a interactive combinatory effect. You cannot escape nature and you cannot escape nurture. For all intents and purposes, we're going to assume that all behaviors, all influences, all developmental processes, everything is some form of combination of nature and nurture. Both of those are going to play an equal, well, not really an equal, but you can't really define which part of which is going to have the most interplay in what a specific behavior might entail. Psychologists are starting to agree that many complex behaviors have some genetic loading. It makes people likely to develop in a particular way, but our actual development also depends on what we experience in our environment. And in this context, environment can be not only nurture, but can also be biological. So I kind of touched on this in the intro when I was talking about how your nature can also influence the type of environment that you find yourself in. It's kind of common sense that your environment can actually influence your nature. If you live in, Chernobyl or something like that, then, the environment is going to impact your DNA and your genes and your body and things like that. High stress environments can also have an impact on your health, things like that, the whole mind-body connection. But a lot of people don't realize that your physical body, your genes, can actually alter your environment as well. So this causal arrow can go kind of both directions. For example, let's say something like intelligence. Intelligence, we think, has a genetic loading, but people who are of a very, very high intelligence are naturally going to seek out different environments than people who are of a lower intelligence. If you spend, a lot of time at the chess clubs or at MIT or whatever, then you're going to have a very, very different environment and a very, very different life course than you would if you were to spend time, doing something else. Also, something like physical attractiveness. Physical attractiveness can have a great deal of influence on the type of environment in which you are exposed. People who are very, very physically attractive tend to live very, very different lives than people who are perhaps not as physically attractive. That's just kind of a fact of today's society. So this interplay, this interaction between nature and nurture, it can go both ways, and a lot of people don't really realize that's really how it works. Development is not best understood as all nature or all nurture. It is, again, an interaction of the two, an interplay of both things, not really having an equal play, but a level of responsibility. You can't tear apart, say that this is, this particular behavior is completely biological, or this, my environment made me rob banks or whatever. That doesn't fly psychologically. All right, are early experiences more important than later ones? Ooh, good question. Some psychologists believe that unless infants experience warm, nurturing caregiving in the first year or so of life, they will not develop to their full potential. This is called the early experience doctrine, and it suggests that after a period of early development, we become relatively fixed and permanent in our makeup. The early experience doctrine basically says that you have this very, very narrow window of opportunity. If you are not properly raised, if you're not given the needed level of warmth, nurturing, loving, caregiving, support, all of those things within that very narrow window of opportunity, all things being equal, you will not rise to your fullest potential. You will not be on the same level as someone who perhaps was able to get those. So the early experiences, how you're treated, how you're exposed early on, kind of lays that foundation for where you are and the type of life that you're going to lead. And not only type of life you're going to lead, but also your outlook on life, your ability to trust other people, your ability to interact with other people, your ability to believe that your basic needs are going to be met. If you have this level of early onset, loving, nurturing, caregiving, where all of your basic needs are met, etc., then all things being equal, according to the early experience doctrine, you will be better off than people who did not. If you grew up in an environment where, you might have to take care of yourself and you have to fend for yourself, then you might kind of take on this onset of ideas and feelings that, the only person you really have to depend on is yourself. because the people who were supposed to take care of you and the people who were supposed to look out for you and love you, i.e. your parents, didn't. And so if they don't take care of you, then why should I expect anyone else to as well? And so you kind of adopt this almost gruff survivalist mentality where, again, the only person you really have to depend on is yourself. And you'll meet people along the way that are truly generous and truly supportive and truly wanting to help you, and you won't believe them. You will think that, they have some form of ulterior motive, or there's something that they have to gain from that. Because again, early on, you learned that this is not something that you can depend on. And so when it comes in its truest form, you're not going to buy it, and it's going to be very, very hard for you to open up or trust people or things like that, etc. In contrast, some psychologists emphasize the power of later experience and liken development in later years to the ebb and flow of a river. This is called the later experience doctrine, and its advocates argue that children are responsive to change and that sensitive caregiving is just as important later as it is earlier. They believe that too little attention is given to adult development, arguing that although early experiences are important contributors to development, they are not more important than later ones. So later experience doctrine says that, early experiences are important, but you're not SOL if you don't get it in this narrow window band of opportunity. You can kind of compensate and overcome these deficits if you get them later on. We are not set in stone by the age of 3 or 4. We can learn to overcome and learn to trust again and things like that. But again, if you're going to throw your weight behind something like the early experience doctrine, you have to kind of realize that, it does make a lot of sense that, you will be operating at this deficit. And this deficit, although it might be able to be overcome, it's going to take a whole lot of soul searching and a whole lot of work and effort that someone who did experience those types of environments early on don't have to worry about. And so they can go on to higher pursuits. And, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and things like that are going to come into play as well here. And I think we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But so early experience doctrine does kind of make a lot of sense that, if you get this out of the way early on, then you don't have to waste a whole lot of resources and energies overcoming it later on. Even though that might be possible, it's better to get it out of the way early and not have to worry about it later. All right, child development. Human infants are among the most helpless newborns on Earth. If you think about, you watch those nature documentaries or whatever on the National Geographic Channel, and an elephant or a gazelle or something, has a child out in the Serengeti or whatever, mama pops them out and they're instantly stand up and walk in, and they're able to kind of keep up with the herd and feed themselves. And human beings are not like that. When we come out, we are completely helpless. We are completely dependent on our caregivers, which again throws a whole lot of support and emphasis on this early experience doctrine type thing we were talking about earlier. How if there's something that you have that you need, then you are completely dependent on people around you, your caregivers, to supply that for you. And if they don't, then you stand a very high chance of not surviving. And that includes even love and affection. You can die. Children, babies, can die from lack of attention and love and affection. Newborns come into the world equipped with several genetically wired reflexes that are crucial for their survival. Some of these reflexes persist throughout life, while others automatically extinguish in the months following birth as higher brain functions mature and infants develop voluntary control over many behaviors. So again, because we kind of come out a little bit undercooked, if you will, newborns have to have these innate, hardwired, reflexive types of behaviors because they don't yet possess the conscious control to really control their bodies, control their movements, control their desires, things like that. So babies come hardwired with natural reflexes that, if you put something in a baby's hand, they're going to grab it, they're going to vice grip it. That's a survival mechanism, evolutionary instinct. The baby doesn't have to consciously think, there's something in my hand, I have to grab hold of it or I might lose it. It's an automatic conscious thought controlling bypassing mechanism that just automatically works. You put something in a child's mouth, it's going to suck. This again helps the child feed, helps the child survive, and allows that, because the brain itself is not yet matured to the point where they do have conscious control over their bodily reflex, their bodily motions, movements, things like that, that these instincts have to kind of take the place of that, because we are so undeveloped when we are born. Psychologists believe that motor skills and perceptual skills are coupled. Babies are continually coordinating their movements with information they perceive through their senses to learn how to maintain their balance, reach for objects in space, and move across various surfaces and terrains. This again is very, very survival, evolutionarily focused and oriented to help us maintain our balance and not kill ourselves when we are, a month and a half old. We are constantly reaching out into space. We're learning how to, pair sensory input with tactile input. And when we get to Piaget stages here in just a little bit, that will make a little bit more sense. But babies are constantly trying to reach out in their environment, and they're putting everything in their mouths, and they're licking their feet, and they're trying to discover and find out the world around them. And that's really the only mechanism that they have. It's a very, very rudimentary, very, very animalistic, base level processing. Watching other people is also a way infants acquire knowledge about the world. Human infants differ from baby monkeys, for instance, in their strong reliance on imitation, being much more likely than other primates to follow an example in a rote fashion. Imitation may be the quickest way to immerse oneself in the new world. Again, this is a very, very survival mechanism-oriented type of ordeal. Do what mama does. Do what people who have survived longer than you do. If you want to be rich, if you want to be smart, if you want to learn a new thing, surround yourself by people who do it well. Learn from people who have already gone through what you do. Immersion is the best way, literally, to learn a new skill. Dive into it. Let it consume you. You want to learn how to play a musical instrument? Surround yourself by people who play musical instruments. You can learn from them and learn a great deal. All right. Piaget. Okay. Piaget is a nightmare for students, but again, he has a lot of really kind of complex ideas. So put on your thinking cap for this section, because it's not really something that is common knowledge, but it's very, very important. And as we go through it, it's gonna make some sense. But it's probably things that you may not have really thought about or had to process or really learn about a great deal prior to this exposure here. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. Around the mid-1900s, a Swiss developmental psychologist named Jean Piaget changed the way we think about children's minds. In Piaget's views, children use what are called schemas to make sense of what they experience. According to Piaget, a schema, or also called a scheme, is a mental structure or concept that organizes information and provides a structure for interpreting it. Let me get a drink here. So, basically, schemas can be thought of as a methodology of thought, a way of categorizing and recognizing things in your environment that you have been previously exposed to. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense now, but it will here in just a second. Just trust me and stay with me here. If you think of your mind as a big filing cabinet, all right? Each thing that you have in your mind is going to represent a particular environmental construct that you have come in contact with. So, pen, good example. A pen, your pen schema, okay, If you imagine your entire mind, everything you know about the world as one big, huge filing cabinet, everything you come in contact with from the time you are born until the time that you die is going to be held in some file in this filing cabinet of your mind. All right? Piaget constructed schemas to be the individual file folders within the mind, the file of your mind. So you have a file for each and everything that you've ever experienced. For example, pen. You have a pen schema. Every single one of you does. Every person who's ever come in contact and learned what a pen is has a schema for pen. When you see a pen, you know it's a pen, you have no question, and you categorize it and file that individual pen away in your schema for pen. Now, most of you have never seen this particular pen before because it's in my house. Hopefully you've never seen this pen before. If you have, we need to have a meeting because you've been in my house. But you have never seen this particular pen before. But when I hold it up to the screen, hopefully each and every one of you know that this is a pen. Even though you can't touch it, even though you can't see it, even though you can't hold it, you can see it and still know that it is a pen because you have come in contact with enough pens in your vast experience of the world that your schema, your file for pen, has enough exemplars, enough examples of what pens are that you can see something that looks like this and see that it is similar enough to everything else that is in your pen schema. Every other exemplar, every other example of pen that you've ever seen matches closely enough to what you see here that you can justify with a reasonable degree of certainty that this probably is also a pen. You have just added this red and white pen that I'm holding in my hands right now. You have just added this exemplar, this particular example of pen into your pen schema, into your pen file. So you can imagine it as, you're drawing kind of a mental representation of what this pen is. You're putting it on a piece of paper and you're dropping that piece of paper into your pen schema, your pen file. Okay, the more contact you